this as far as where we're at. So, finishing up phase two, headed into phase three tomorrow. We're excited to kind of keep progressing as we go forward. Certainly, a little bit of a long process for us here, but we're just trying to do everything on a way to stay safe as we put everybody back in the building. So our first time to have all 80 in the building this week, which was great, and then really kick into a longer schedule as we progress towards training camp on on Monday. So guys are working hard. Guys have done everything that we've asked them to. Really, just a very impressive group overall with kind of their focus and their drive to to do everything right. I think like for all of us, without the spring, realizing how fragile all this is. I think everyone's just excited to get out there, get on the grass together, and start working. So we got a lot of work to do. We've had some situations with the walkthroughs where we're all in the huddle and we're trying to communicate and trying to put a play together and try to go get lined up. And it certainly looks like it's our first time. So we got to get that fixed and go forward from there. But we got a couple more days before camp starts. So, all right, I'll just kind of open it up and let you guys ask questions.
All right, Justin, start us off.
Morning, Matt. You talked about the fragility of the whole situation. You look at the situations, the Marlins, the Indians sending home a couple pitchers, the situation with Seattle's cornerback the other day. How valuable are those teaching moments for you that, they're happening outside your building and you can use them, I guess, to set examples?
Yeah, it's a great, that's a great analysis right there for us, is that we do try to use everything we can to educate our guys all the way across the board. So certainly things that don't happen within our sport, if they can apply, that we can learn from, I think that's really important. And certainly things that happen within the sport, those, directly correlate. So for us, I think our guys are just trying to understand, hey, we're trying to do everything as possible to keep everybody safe and keep yourself and your teammates, but your families and your teammates' families. We know those situations come up and we got to deal with them the best we can when they do. But I think the biggest challenge for all of us, I would say, is as we get comfortable in these environments and we get better, or more time into it where we do feel safer, but it's just staying diligent with being protected. Sometimes it's easy to maybe forget your mask when you walk out of your office or when you walk, into a new room, but you got to have it on, you got to put it up, and just kind of staying, just real consistent with that stuff, I think is important because, as we progress here, things will change and variables will change. So we just got to make sure that we're doing everything as possible to stay safe.
And as you roll into this first on-field practices, do you envision those looking differently in the COVID world?
It's a good question. I think everything looks differently right now, and I think the guys are getting used to that. So maybe by the time we fully get on the field, it'll feel normal, even though probably if you just compare it to last year, it is different. I do think that there are certain aspects of the things that we do are going to look exactly the same, but maybe it's after the snap that looks different, or guys maybe paying a little bit more attention to what they're doing with their equipment, or obviously the water bottles and things like that we've had to address, and how we're going to hydrate. All of that stuff will definitely look different.
Okay, we'll go Tim next.
Hey, Coach, thanks for taking the time. You guys are going to get the pads on here, sooner rather than later. I was just curious. We typically don't see many live periods in practice because you guys have the joint practice in the preseason. Without those things, could we potentially see a couple more live periods? I mean, this is a tackling game, and I don't know if you want to go into week one without having tackled. How do you evaluate those young guys? I'm just curious, will it look any different? Could you maybe sprinkle in a few more live periods than what we've seen in the past?
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues we got right now is just trying to get those tackling fundamentals full speed and live. We do kind of mix in some live periods when we get to training camp, certainly down on the goal line, and we usually do that relatively quick. One of the things we have had to evaluate is we're going to need to tackle somebody before we get to that first game. You need to feel it, you need to see it, you need to see the speed of it. The question is, how do we do that in a safe environment? Certainly from the preseason games, that's kind of where you get your live action there with the tackling part of it. But we're going to have to do that. And I think for us, it's trying to really put them in, we call them more like inline situations where maybe the collision and the contact isn't as great. And it's a little bit of a safer play, and try to eliminate some of the more space and speed type of plays. But they still need to feel that. They need to be able to drive through and just get that out of the way, and do it also in a point in camp where we've had enough practice where we feel comfortable doing that safely, and everybody's kind of operating at a high level in equipment, and also far enough away from the first game where you have enough time to recover from that standpoint. So that the tackling is a big one. Absolutely.
Stets.
How you doing, Coach?
Great to see you.
Great to see you. I know you're you're a coach that likes to have your team practice hard, and obviously it's a different season than other seasons. So, what's your changes in approach on how you balance going live, tackling, getting guys ramped up for Week 1 against Chicago while maintaining a sense of trying to keep guys safe and healthy going forward too?
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky balance. I think the one thing about football that's a little bit different than probably every other sport is that at some point you need to get hit and you need to do some hitting. That's just part of the game, and there is a little bit of an acclimation period for your body when it is taking shots, and you're getting hit from different angles and different directions, and just getting used to kind of some of that, some of those plays that are just taxing on you overall. So the key for us will be able to take advantage of the ramp up period, get into pads here, get into practice, slowly build upon that as we go. There are certain time restraints that we will follow as we push forward into that. Try to hit the target mark, let's say around, what would normally be the third preseason game. And build towards it slowly there, where we're really operating at a high level. What would be that game or that game week? Try to get a scrimmage in and try to take a look at some of those live situations that we can practice and execute there. I'd say the other really big challenge for us is going to be special teams. I think that's the one area and the one phase of the game where we say all the time, it's really hard to simulate the speed of special teams in practice. And we use those preseason games, certainly, in the foremost to get special teams reps during a normal training camp. So that'll be a big adjustment for us. We're really going to have to push that as hard as we can to get a feel for that. So it's not, the first time in Chicago. And then on top of that is just, constantly trying to stay in front of the injuries and make sure that we're doing a good job of keeping the team healthy as we go through that. So it'll be a big challenge for us. But, if we try to keep those markers the same that we normally use, and just understand that in the game of football, the only way to get better is to practice. I mean, that's first and foremost. It's not like the other sports where you have a lot of games to go out and play and you can get better by playing games. We don't have that luxury, and certainly without preseason games, it's even less. So for us, we got to improve during practice.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Chris Burke.
Hey, Matt. Morning.
Morning.
Sort of, I guess, two parts to this question, but you obviously have a lot of friends, contacts in the coaching profession. On the NFL side, are you guys bouncing ideas off each other, or is this kind of state secret stuff where you're trying to keep it all internal? And then sort of the second part of it is, on the college side, are you going to those coaches? Because they obviously don't have the OTAs and the mini camps and stuff. So a lot of this is not exactly what they would be doing, but kind of similar timeline for them. Have you reached out to any of them to get ideas for how to ramp this up?
Yeah, great question. I'll go in reverse order. I think, honestly, for us, my resources in college football and the guys that I know that coach at that level were probably the first ones that I contacted going through the spring, because they were in the virtual world before we were. Our off-season program started then a little bit later than their off-season programs or their spring programs. So got a lot of guidance and a lot of advice, and tried to pick their brain as much as possible about how to do that virtually. So that was hugely helpful from that aspect of it. And then going into training camp, certainly from a standpoint of college football, they don't play preseason. So there is a ramp up period that they follow, and how they acclimate and get their players ready to go for the season. So that's been those have been great tools for us to use and conversations for us to have with some college coaches. And then, on the professional side, you're absolutely right. You do have your network of close colleagues that you work with and have worked with in the past, and do tend to communicate and reach out and bounce ideas as much as you can. The thing about it is once you get rolling, just like everybody else, you hate to bother guys because they're kind of in the middle of it too. So when you can reach out, if something comes up, you have a question, certainly you're trying to use as many resources as possible. I think with as unusual of a times as we're in for training camp, I think everybody really understands this is all new for everybody. Let's try to, bounce ideas and help each other out, as opposed to just try to, keep it all close to the chest to yourself.
Thank you.
Kyle next.
Morning, Matt. I just had a cement truck about 10 seconds ago start backing up in the driveway next to me. So I apologize if there's some background noise. Two questions. One, have you had any coaches on your staff or people on your staff test positive throughout this whole process?
You know what? Good question. Really our positive tests have been limited from that aspect of it. I can't remember off the top of my head. Obviously, there's nothing pressing. Otherwise, I'd
Yeah.
remember right away. And I'm also not really sure how deep into all that, I'll go just in general with
Yeah.
just everybody's own individual kind of care.
Yeah, okay. And the second question is, obviously Matthew Stafford had a lot of success in year one with Bev, right? He's talked about it a lot. The numbers speak for themselves. We saw what we saw last year. It was good, but the tape is out there now, right? You're going into year two. How do you evolve that whole thing while staying true to what worked last year, but also introducing new nuances or whatever this year to surprise teams or keep it fresh?
Yeah, it'll be a great challenge as we go forward through that, because certainly there's things that were really great last year that we liked, and parts of that season, everybody was intact, or there was groups of guys that were intact that are here now. I think certainly there's new pieces that are added, and definitely the growth of those players individually will affect how things happen and how that offense just elevates itself and evolves. So that's the exciting part of it. And certainly, with Matthew with the second year in there and more command and more control of the things that he can do, we all know how special that is out on the field. So that'll be exciting to see. But we do understand that without the spring, with rolling into training camp right now with the limited amount of opportunities we have to get ready for the season, this is probably something that's going to have to evolve as the season goes too, and everybody gets a little bit more comfortable with their roles within the offense right now.
Okay, we'll go two more. Dave, then Rothstein.
Morning, Matt. Hope you're doing well. Back to kind of the whole theme of what everything looks like, I guess, now as you sort of get on the field. Can you just give us an idea of maybe where you're at from like an installation point, like typically where you would be at this point in mid-August? Are you ahead, behind, on pace? And if you're behind, do you foresee it being an issue to catch up with where you normally be?
Yeah, well, I said this to the team last night. Think about where we would have been last night if things hadn't changed, right? It would have been our first game. So, from that aspect of it, things are completely different. We would have been, coming back and evaluating a game tape already. So from that aspect of it, we're trying to we put the installs in together. We kind of have an idea of how many installs it takes to get ready to go. The different thing for us this year, obviously with the calendar, is without those preseason games and without the travel the day before, the post game, the day after kind of evaluation, we actually pick up 3 extra days, with that. So we've spaced it out accordingly and kind of put it at that target point of the 3rd preseason game to make sure that everything is kind of in and installed so that we can go through and run and prepare to approach that week like we normally would, and put the emphasis on getting ready for the season. So that was kind of, we backtracked it from that standpoint. And made sure that we got everything in. I think certainly part of it is having conversation with the coaches and the players of, maybe in some instances less is more, just try to get really good at a couple things as opposed to try to install too much right now, knowing that we're going to have to do that as we go through the season.
Didn't even dawn on me that the first preseason game would have taken place already. Totally forgot with the schedule. The other thing I wanted to ask was just, I don't know if you've had these discussions yet or not, but if you don't have fans, where do you stand on, piping in crowd noise versus silence versus, I don't know, what would you like the atmosphere to be like, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be real honest with you, I haven't really thought about that too much because we just haven't really even taken the field yet for a snap offense versus defense. Certainly at home, I'd like any advantage we can get. So I'm all for that. But on the road, definitely not. So if they can get us just at the home games, that'd be perfect. But I haven't really thought too much about it.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Mike, last question.
Hey, Matt. So I actually kind of want to follow on that a little bit in that you spend a bunch of spring preparing, you spend a lot of summer prepping for week 1, week 2. How different is that going to be those first few weeks because of no preseason, of no joint practices, and of everything that's really, questions of crowds? Like, how different for you is that going to be an approach, maybe that first month of the season, what you normally would do?
Yeah, great question. I would say, honestly, my approach to the season in general probably changed a bunch of years ago when we lost doubles, I would say, in training camp. And we took the spring and really tried to space out installations going back to the spring. And then took the idea that training camp, we were not going to have as many practices as we normally would. And you started to look at things in September a lot different. You started to look at the schedule a lot different from that aspect of it. So obviously, even more extremes now with the scale back without the spring and trying to get ready for the season. So from that approach, I think it's really The idea is to be fundamentally sound, to do a good job with the basics and make sure that, you're not doing anything out there that may be too complicated that's going to cause mistakes or penalties or turnovers or things like that lose games. I think, the first couple of games are going to be interesting from things like situational football and how teams handle, just game management. I think a lot of that's going to be really important because we don't have those trial runs of preseason where we can get in there and work on the communication. So we're going to have to try to simulate that the best we can, to get ready to go. So I think that is what the beginning part of the season will look like. I think for us, we're just going to try to go out and play really sound football and be able to adjust it in the game like normal and hopefully play good fundamentals. But I think some of that will look, definitely different through the month of September.
Is there maybe an advantage or more of a disadvantage if, say, you're a first year, obviously you're not a first year coach, but if you're a first year coach jumping into this because you haven't had any of that versus maybe your situation where you have some continuity on your staff and with your team?
Sure. Great question. I don't know. I mean, I know some of the first year coaches that I've talked to and reached out to and had conversations with, they're trying to figure it out like the rest of us. But I'd say for all of us, this is all new. So we're kind of all first year coaches going through this. We'll see how it affects when you get to the season, and kind of get into game rhythm and some of the communication there. I think a lot of it will be good. There'll be some comfort level with the in-game communication for some staffs and maybe parts of staffs. And then certainly, just in our instance where we've had some changeover, we're going to have to work through that at a pretty high level pretty quick.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, good to see everybody. Please stay safe, and we'll see everybody real soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.